Stathopoulos and Josh Phegan come together in an incredible podcast, Grow, Scale, Master.
An energetic approach to drive progress, master skills, build strengths and put the strategy back into rapid business and personal success.
Backed by real-world experience in rapid scaling to playing the long-term game of business, it's the story of all the lessons learned on the journey to mastery.
Be inspired, renew your energy and chase the future with Grow, Scale, Master.
Con, they say one of the greatest skills of all time is to be able to leverage off the existing relationships that you've already got and to use those experiences, the opportunity that you've had around you, the data that you've got access to, and to go and do great things about it. This is going to be a cracking episode as we get into that whole conversation. Con, what's your view? Do you see a lot of agents that are building data or are they working data?
A bit of both. I think depending on where you're at in your career, if you're a developing or a launch agent, it's all about building data. The one thing that I keep seeing though is that we are so data enriched that there's so much available information, yet we're actually not farming or mining that data and building really good, meaningful relationships with just a conversation. It just starts with one conversation, right? So a just listed or a just sold call, it's on your database, it's someone that you met, it all just starts with one call.
You know, the interesting thing is I see like a lot of people that are absolutely fascinated with doing everything they can to build heaps of data. And then I see them like with a printed call list or a digital call list and they go, don't like them, can't remember them, not ringing them, they were ugly. Yeah. And I'm like, what are you doing here, man? Like literally, like, so that whole idea is that, okay, great, what do you do specifically to go to build data? Now, there's an agent here in Sydney, they were building the new West Connects. It was going to go right through the middle of his suburb. Off the back of that, he built a downloadable PDF. It was a report that you could get a copy of and it said like literally how much will West Connects impact on the saleable value of your house?
Great guy too. I know him very well.
Download the report. Yeah. He got 15,000 people download that report in 6 weeks.
Wow.
Now that's a foundational piece about like, you know, actually building the data. The secondary conversation is, okay, great, what do you do to go to work it? So this is going to be a foundational idea is to say, okay, great, if I'm going to put someone into that database, then what's the plan? Now, we're not really necessarily talking about the individual, but definitely the category. And this is kind of an interesting conversation that literally we had this old school thinking going back 15 years ago inside of databases where you would attach an activity plan or some sort of scheduled task against people. And that was great when you had 10 people in your database. But when all of a sudden we started getting 50s, 100s, maybe 200 people coming to open for inspections on a Saturday, then all of a sudden this database just rapidly grew.
Yes.
And what we then started to realize is that, okay, you know what, it actually has to be a bit different than that. It's about really identifying what can I do with the specific data sets that we've got. Now, Con, there are big data sets in business. We like big data sets and we cannot lie. I want you to think about that, man, and tell me, what are some of the big data sets that you like? And then I'll go with mine.
Oh, look, I just simply like the fact that data means nothing if you cannot work it, okay? And this is all about relationships. This is, as I said earlier, about starting a conversation. So I look at our business, we run off ideal weeks, we run off an ideal call plan. So who do I call on a Monday? Make it really simple. We're calling back OFI attendees. If you didn't call them back on a Saturday, you're calling pipeline vendors, you're calling hot buyers or underbidders that missed out. You're calling your vendors. And who else would you call on a Monday? Make a list. Then on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday and Friday, real estate's really predictable. But if you're not calling that data, then that data is orphaned. And when it's orphaned, people assume the responsibility. And I've seen this so often. I had an agent years ago in the East that didn't call any of their past clients for about 7 years. So we did an exercise. We went back into RP data, worked out how many people had resold, not through him, and then actually presented it back for him as a bit of shock therapy to contact his past clients. $3.83 million in GCI over 7 years missed out because he was too embarrassed or he had forgotten or there was no process to pick up the phone and just say, hey, Josh, it's your anniversary call. Or just, Josh, you know, this has just been listed or just been sold in your street. So for me, the big data sets are the people that you meet face-to-face, past clients, market appraisals, people that are open for inspections, underbidders. Imagine what you can do with underbidders.
Yeah, sure.
These are people that have got a highest propensity and are on the boil right now, ready to spend. They've just missed out. Imagine just going back through your database and speaking to people that have lookalike properties or old MAs, just saying, hey, Josh, I'm not sure if you're looking to sell, but I've just met someone that was an underbidder at this property. They bid to this level. Would you be interested at that level for us to take them through yours? I mean, it's pretty simple. The worst thing that they're going to say is no, but thanks for thinking of us, right?
And this is the classic conversations is that I love that. I thought that, when you start to think about past clients, maybe we just think that, it's going to be every 7 or 8 years. Now, I saw some stats the other day, and they're saying that 16% of all transactions in Australia in the last 90 days, the seller bought the house in the last 3 years.
Yep.
So what that goes to tell me, 1 in 6 transactions in Australia was that.
Yes.
So that tells me is that, like, what your beliefs are so wrong because it's not about the transaction, it's about the referral capability.
Yeah.
So that naturally, I'm going to move from, maybe some weird abstract concepts of what we're going to call an anniversary call, and I want to move it into a verb of an annual checkup.
Yeah.
So I actually want to come out, I want to see you, I want to give you an idea of the value of your place.
Yeah.
Now, I don't really mind if Con is selling right now. What I actually want to know is Con going to be down at the deli or down picking the kids up from school, referring me as the agent of choice because I'm genuine and I care and I connect about things that are actually really relevant. And I always think about that. The speed to building a great relationship is about learning how to be relevant to someone, allowing that relevancy to drive the frequency of the communication, and then being consistent around the actions that you actually undertake. Now, that's kind of interesting because I see a lot of trapped clients and potential politics inside of organizations. And one of my greatest examples of a big data set that literally is absolutely missed is without a doubt what we go to call archive landlords.
Absolutely, totally, 100% agree.
Now, this is classic. We've got a client down in Melbourne, about 32,000 properties under management, which is a very big business by anyone's standards. The interesting conversation is that we know on the average rent roll, about 10% of all of the landlords are actually in a position that they'll hand back their investment property. They might move it to an alternate management. They might sell it, whatever the story is. And so that means that if you have 1,000 properties, that means that there's effectively 100 every year that are going that way. Over 10 years, you've now built 1,000 archive landlords that have kind of moved on or done something else. And the basic idea is like, okay, great, well, where do those landlords live? Because I actually want to know about their principal place of residence. Now, interesting enough, the property managers archive them. The BDM probably doesn't think about it. They're not sales orientated.
Yep.
The principal doesn't want to necessarily hand over the data, but it's archive landlords.
Yeah.
So that they're not even in the property management ecosystem. They're not a current revenue generator, and we're not doing anything with that relationship. And whenever I get someone to go, Josh, I could go and work in this organisation or this one, which one would you choose? This one's a brand new startup, or this business has been running for 20 years.
So I'll take the 20 years every day of the week.
And usually because I'm looking for the data sets
Correct.
that I can go and play or leverage, and I can do that. And often when you do an acquisition or a merger and you bring in another business, I bet you that on that valuation, there's nothing to do with the past client list, and there's no valuation associated with the archive landlords.
Yeah. So totally agree. 38% of all of our landlords in our portfolio, we've got over 2,000, live in the same area that they've got their investment. So imagine now it's, tax time, right? We're coming up to tax time, end of financial year, calling your landlord that has that investment property and just saying, hey, Josh, just wanted to reach out, want to make sure that you're okay, you're satisfied with the level of service that we've been providing you. We're getting a lot of calls coming up to the end of financial year where some of our owners actually want an up-to-date market appraisal on what their property might be worth. We're not selling. No, I totally get that, but it's open to your investment property and where you live. So you can do 3 things: make sure you're adequately insured, unlock equity for other investment strategies, or make sure that you can actually potentially refinance for a better rate. Did you want me to send the computer version, or did you want me to send someone out and actually do one face-to-face?
Yeah, so easy.
How easy is it? The worst thing that they're going to say is, no, thanks, we're totally fine, but they will remember you. And when they go down the deli or the coffee shop, they're going to say, hey, man, I spoke to this guy and he's amazing. You should actually speak to him. So basic.
So but this is a whole conversation around perfecting workflow. So you start to say, okay, great, something actually happens as a trigger event. Who do you call?
Yeah.
So literally, if I listed the house next door to where you live, Con, I'm going to give you a call about that.
Absolutely.
If I sell that house next door to you, I'm going to give you a call about that. If a competitor lists the house next door, I'm going to call you about that. If the competitor sells that house, I'm going to call you about that. But so many agents in their brain are like, oh, databasing is too hard, I can't see these people. And depending on the CRM that you use, it's either a search function or you get to zoom in on a map. But you know what? There's an old school saying that if you don't put it into the database, then ultimately you can't do anything with it.
It's like a vine, right? It's like a grape on a vine. If you don't use it, it just dies on the vine.
And this is interesting because effective market areas versus relationships, or is it a combination of both? So you hear agencies talk about EMAs, effective marketing areas. You hear them talk about farm areas.
Yep.
You hear other people talk about, well, hang on a second, this is going to be your little area, your little zone, your service area. And then we hear other people go, well, where are all the relationships? So what I tend to do with an agent is I say, I'm going to take every single one of your existing customers and I'm going to go and put them on a map. So where did all your past clients who bought from you buy? Where did all your past clients who sold through you move to? And then off the back of that, when a buyer buys from you, where do they come from?
Yep.
And this is what we go to call before, core, and after. So where do they come from? Where do they go?
Yep.
Cotton Eye Joe. But that basic idea is to start to get you to think, okay, great. But a lot of people don't get the forwarding address of where the seller moves to. So that's easy. If we're going to do an Australia Post mail redirection for you, Con, let's get that organised. By the way, that now allows us to update it inside of our system. So then we know where that's going to. And they might be upgrading to the higher priced properties in your area that you don't yet have market share around. And this is kind of crazy that you'd let a relationship move on and not think about it.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in both, to be honest. So I believe in relationships, not postcodes. And I think a relationship can take you wherever you need to go. Beauty about our organisation and the way that we're structured is that you can list and sell wherever you want, as long as it's the right thing to do by your owner, right? But more importantly, I've seen great success with people working farm areas or designated service areas, and I think you have to commit to one of them. So you actually got to be invested financially, emotionally. You've got to do the work. So if you're going to be working a farm area, it's your job and your responsibility. I mean, Peter Chauncey, great friend of ours, he's got a farm area of around circa 1,400 homes. I think he's got 82% market share. Why? Because every single person in that area, every time he lists something, auctions something, or sells something, knows about it. And he's invested over, a decade or more just making sure he's perfected that. So I think there's no right or wrong answer. What I think is you have to make a commitment to enabling that every single person in your service area or your database actually hears from you.
And this is the classic one with Alexander Phillips. You need to make sure that your marketplace is big enough for your aspirations. So if you're only going after 5,000 homes and traditionally only 1% of those actually transact, that's 50 transactions a year, and you need to do 100 deals, 200% market share, it ain't going to work.
Correct. That's exactly right.
So from that point of view, it is really important. Is there potentially one relationship that could open all others?
I think there's there's heaps of relationships that can open up others. But I mean, when I first got into real estate, there was a guy in our office and he had one of those clickers, like the nightclub clickers.
Yeah, sure.
And I asked him, what are you doing? He goes, I'm counting how many calls I make. And I said, how many calls a day do you make? He goes, at least 100, 120, genuinely.
Yeah.
How many people would you connect with? And he said, maybe 30 or 40%. And I said, cool, out of that 30 or 40%, how many people would you actually get an appointment with? He goes, depends on the day. Now, I look at that and I think that there's absolutely a need for us to be able to make sure that we connect with as many people as we possibly can. But I'm a quality over quantity guy. So I looked at who has access to property that I don't have a relationship with at scale. Is that a strata company? Is that a property management company that doesn't have a sales business? Is that an accountant or a financial planner or someone that's in that ecosystem talking to our client before we need it? So for me, those are the relationships that can unlock every single possibility.
There's a classic example here, and I got to think about it. When we got Sydney, obviously it was our relationship with Damien Cooley, and when we got Melbourne, it was our great relationships with Paul Stoner, a guy called Dean O'Brien, and Brisbane was a guy by the name of Damien Hackett, and then over in New Zealand was a guy by the name of Pat Houlihan, and so New Zealand was Peter Knight. So I could actually tell you the cornerstone relationship that opened every other relationship.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is that, okay, great, there was an entry, I think it was maybe 2018, 2019-ish from memory, was Jim's Mowing had opened Jim's Real Estate.
That's right.
In Victoria.
That's right.
Now, at a data play level,
huge.
This was phenomenal because there's 1 million property transactions per month. Now, there was a bit of a problem, I think, with brand translation of literally old mate with Terry Telling how it's going to come and do your open as well on Saturday. But
they could do the whippersnipping and the lawn hedging as well.
But it's not the case. It's one of the biggest franchise businesses in all of Australia.
Correct.
And you start to think about that, like it's just about that whole idea that the idea was great, but execution or maybe brand translation maybe didn't work at that particular point in time for that particular service. But it is really the power of a key influencer. And, this is interesting about saying, okay, is it the local person who's the painter? Is it the plumber? Is it the lawn mowing person? Who's the person that already knows all the people that you want to know in your market area? And what are you doing to build a relationship with them so that you become their best friend?
It's all of them.
Yeah.
It's all of the above, right? So think about who the best time and the best advocate is the people that you've just given the best experience to, which is the vendor that you've just had a great sale or a great experience with, right?
Yeah.
So think about them in your community telling their neighbour. There's a sold sign up on the signboard there at the local cafe. So I think our role is to be able to make sure we unlock the power of those ambassadors and that we can actually get connected to their network, right?
So we've got a guy in Annandale who does six-pack Fridays, and on a Friday goes out to all the local building sites and literally hands out a six-pack to the builders.
Clever man.
Interesting conversation. He goes, mate, I literally go and buy grog at Dan Murphy's and it gets me plenty of leads.
Yeah.
Might keep one for himself. But that basic idea is thinking about that.
Yeah.
And this is also too about like how you build relationships and work that data. When you're building data, it's probably 10, 10, 20. So the 10 houses either side, 20 across the street.
Yeah.
So if you want to increase your average sale price, tell me what are the most expensive streets in your area? where there's a larger lot or a larger style home, or it's more expensive because it's got access to a golf course or a waterway or something along those lines, whenever there's a listing in that street, work the 10 houses either side and the 20 across the street to grow that data. The secondary part is that then what we go to call 40-40. So very basic idea, you list a 4-bedroom home, go into your system, find me all of the 4-bedroom appraisals that you've done, call 20 of them.
Yep.
Hey, Con, thought I'd give you a quick call, got a 4-bedder coming to market similar to yours. When it sells, mate, I'm going to let you know. I know we're going to have 2 or 3 buyers left over. It could be an opportunistic time for you. Hey, by the way, Con, I'll give you a call when that sale happens. The sales happen now, it made X. Hey, mate, I've got 2 buyers left over. Could I wander them through yours? The second part of that is that then we go and we find 20 market appraisals of 3-bedders. Hey, Em, it's Josh. Thought I'd give you a quick call. We've seen this great 4-bedder that's come up. You should come and have a quick look at it. If I get Emily to come and have a look at that 4-bedder, then naturally ends up having, she says, hey, I want to sell my 3-bedder to do that. Then all of a sudden you're now progressing pipeline. How simple is that to do, right?
So basic.
But you know what? I've go to agents and I say, hey, pull me up a list of all your market appraisals. Yeah. There's no bed, bath, car against the appraisals. Yeah. Okay, great. Pull me up a list of all your market appraisals. Oh, I don't put them in the system.
You know what? You just reminded me. There was an agent that was at McGrath that sold an incredible property. I think it was in Killara or Linfield or somewhere on the upper North Shore, and it was over 2,000 square metres, had a swimming pool and a tennis court.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what he did, is he actually went then, he had a record price.
Yeah.
He went into RP Data, he went into his database, found every property that was over 2,000 square metres in the upper North Shore that had a tennis court and a swimming pool, and he got 2 off market. He sold 1, but that was at $14 million.
Yeah.
It's scary that it's so simple, but that's where the genius is, in the simplicity.
When's the housewarming, Con?
You tell me, mate.
So let's go and have a quick look at it.
Experiences that rapidly shaped you.
So one of the things that we did, my dad had a lot of brothers and sisters, and they were in a position that naturally they were talking about it. And for many years they'd set up, and my grandfather, the reason we ended up in Albury, I believe, is that they got in the Statesman DeVille, they drove from Manly and they went as far as the car could go and it landed in Albury, and that's how they decided where they should go. Good Catholic family, a lot of kids.
Yeah.
Naturally, they all ended up in real estate against each other. It was a family firm originally, and by I think about maybe 85 onwards, they were all doing their own independent brand. And there was never anything written down, but Wodonga was kind of like the market that Dad had been given, and Albury was kind of like where all of the salubrious, high-end red brick central Albury homes were, which was a higher price point. It was kind of the sexy real estate where the auctions were done, and the rest were all for sale. And so I wanted to try to crack this market, and I'm like, and no one had ever successfully been able to go and do an office on both sides of the border.
Right.
This is a very, you either did one or the other.
Right.
And so, okay, great. I want to try to change that. So one day I was walking down and back, I feel old now, but this is back in the days when cinemas were popular. And so naturally I was walking and I realised that in this town where I was working, there were 16,000 people a week that went to the cinema.
Wow.
So I was like, okay, great. And I saw that there was this pizza shop on the corner. And I went to the pizza shop. It was one called La Paqueta, was originally out of Victoria. And there was Danny, Ange and Joe that used to run this place. So I went into there and I said, hey, guys, how much are your rates? And they said, it's $2,500 a year. I said, I'm going to pay your rates for you, and all I want is one of your windows. And they go, yeah, okay, great. And it was the window for on this little shop that they had that was where all their supplies were. So they had their sign over it. They go, yeah, okay, great, no problems. We'll clean up the back a little bit, put in a fake wall. And then naturally we put in some window frames so we could literally go and, put it in the window. And it was fascinating because, I was very proud of that. So what I'd do is I would come down and every couple of days I'd remove a property and I'd put one in under offer and I'd put one that was sold and I'd put a new listing up and I'd make that happen. And I'd move the window display around every 2 or 3 days so that naturally if someone kept on coming past, they'd never see the same thing.
Yeah.
And I remember we then put on the bottom of all of our ads that, this was our office address in Wodonga and then this was our show window address in Albury. And what ended up happening is that, Danny, Ange and Joe, they got all these hundreds of people coming in for dinner every night and they just kept on seeing me coming and changing over these things. Now, I would go home, have dinner, then I'd go back out in my suit at 7:30, 8 o'clock at night and go and change it over. And they confused that with me actually just being someone who was working really hard. And so we'd sit down, we have an espresso every Friday afternoon, and then I started getting these phone calls. Josh, it's Danny, you got to come down to the shop. What do you mean you got to come down to the shop? You got to come in and meet Mick. What's the problem with Mick? Mick needs to sell his house. Why does Mick need to sell his house? Oh, he's going to be a guest of Her Majesty. What does that mean? Oh, Mick's going to jail. And so all of a sudden I picked up all of these listings and I just, all of these Italians, and they're great and they knew lots of people. They weren't just going to jail, there's other reasons. But the interesting thing was that I think that in that first year of doing that, I picked up 15 listings out of that show window.
Wow.
And so like at the time, it was a really significant thing that we'd never been able to crack that market, but we cracked it through perception.
Clever.
And so the lesson that I always learned is, the interesting thing is that, Danny, Ange and Joe became some of the best referrers to me inside of that marketplace because they knew lots of people.
Absolutely. One of the ideas or experiences that's rapidly shaping me at the moment is just reflecting back on my CrossFit days when I used to be a supreme athlete. If you can edit that out, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
But there was a sign on the front door. So at 5 o'clock, 5:30 in the morning. And so right now, it's winter.
Yeah.
Summer bodies are made in winter.
Yeah.
But so are summer listings.
Yeah,
right?
sure.
So all the work is right now.
You've been working on that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But there was a sign up on the front door and it said, "It doesn't get easier. You just get better."
Sure.
And that's just something that just keeps reminding me right now because the mornings are colder, the afternoons get cold and it's windy, it's wet, it's rainy. This is the time when we need to buckle down, not go into hibernation. This is where we need to actually start that workload, getting in preparation for spring and summer.
Something that's changing your view.
Con, this is a great concept that there is more opportunity in the relationships you already have. And, I really learned this a lot where I just think, okay, great. If there were just 20 people that I stayed really tight with and I invested heavily on breakfast, lunches, dinners, coffees, catch-ups, waters, knowing their kids' birthdays, being a part of that, then naturally the power of what those 20 people could do for the growth of a business is absolutely phenomenal. How important is it to actually be in that position that you start to say, okay, great, what can I do to build and to expand the existing relationships that I've got rather than always having to go and chase more of surface level relationships as opposed to ones that are deep?
Critical. Imagine if you had only one listing that you could possibly get a year and you could only meet one buyer that was qualified for that one listing.
Yeah.
How would you behave? What would you do?
You'd be exemplary, right?
That's exactly right. So why can't we just repeat that on a day-to-day basis? A. B, I say this in terms of leadership and recruitment's a big thing in real estate, right? The best recruits are the ones that are sitting in the chairs right now in your office. So imagine just fostering that relationship, making people feel special. Where are those wow moments that you're creating in your business, in your life, in your office with your clients? So for me, every opportunity to meet someone should be that special opportunity to be able to start a relationship, and that relationship could lead to somewhere or nowhere, but the beauty about that is a complete detachment from any outcome.
And there's a great old school saying that, like good markets mask poor behavior.
Yes.
And, bad markets actually expose all the poor behavior that you have. Or the Warren Buffett version of that, when the tide goes out, anyone who's been swimming naked soon gets found out.
Yeah, that's exactly right.